Well, hey there, this is Joe Van Cleve, and welcome to the Motor Scooter Diaries. I'm, uh, I'm down a couple miles away from the house. I have a new little piece of kit that I wanted to show you, and I'm still kind of experimenting with it. Well, this is essentially it's a $50 knockoff of a GoPro, but it came with the waterproof case housing that's good, supposedly waterproof down to 30 meters, and it had a bunch of accessory mounts that came with it and a nice little carrying case. I had to figure out how to mount this on my motorcycle helmet. The idea is to get some action shots during these Motor Scooter Diary videos, make it a little more interesting. They had some sticky mounts that adhesively adhere to either the helmet here or on the side, but they're flat mounts, and of course the helmet surface is curved, and it's not really ideal. You can't really guarantee it's going to hold. But what they did have is this one adapter that has a 1/4-20 threaded tripod bushing on the bottom, and so I drilled a 1/4-inch hole through my helmet and put a flathead, like an elevator bolt, up from the bottom with a fender washer on it, and it's between the lining, underneath the lining of the helmet, so I don't really feel it on my forehead. But that bolt comes out through the top here. Then I have a couple thick rubber washers, and I cut the bolt down just to the right size so that it hopefully it's nice and secure now. I don't have to worry about any adhesive coming loose. So I can adjust the thumb screw here and adjust the angle of this up and down for my writing angle. And of course, as I move my head back and forth, I'll be able to pan the camera. Well, I just wanted to stop and briefly introduce the helmet to you. And the problem I've been having is with this initially is that there is the top button on the right here is the record button. And it's there's a little bit of play. When you push it, the camera moves slightly inside the box. And if you don't push it hard enough, it won't actually trip the shutter and start recording. When it does start recording, you hear a little beepy noise, and that's your audible indication. But so I'm going to have to experiment with this, so I hope I can get a good, accurate, reliable shutter action on the starting, stopping of this thing. So we'll see. Well, so I had some intermittent success with getting this little camera to start and stop recording reliably, and what I think it is, there's a gap between the bottom of the camera and the inside of the housing, and when I push the button up here, the camera kind of moves a little bit instead of the top button being pressed. And so I stopped here at the Flying Star Cafe on Rio Grande Boulevard, and I got a little piece of newspaper and kind of folded it up and stuck it in there as a wedge to try to see if I could test it out. Anyway, so now it's turned on, and let's press the top button just a little bit. Pink. There it is. See, it's now recording. So maybe it's going to be a little more reliable. Let's go drive down Rio Grande Boulevard and test it out, shall we? We are at the open space area near the Rio Grande and Alameda Boulevard. There's Alameda up there, and we're going to walk down to the river. Yes, there are horse riders here, and so there's the trail that goes underneath the underpass of the Alameda Boulevard. And if there's horses down there, if you're riding a bicycle, you should stop and, inquire as to how pedestrians yield to horses and bicyclists yield to both pedestrians and horses. So there. So behind me is Alameda Boulevard, hence the sound of traffic noise. But what I'm looking at now, this is an acequia, essentially part of the Spanish legacy of New Mexico. Water is fed by sluice gates from the Rio Grande itself. This is the old Alameda Bridge that has been here since probably the 1930s. It was originally a two-way bridge, the only way across the Rio Grande in North Albuquerque. And then about, I don't know, 25 years, 30 years ago, they built the wider Alameda Bridge, and they turned this into a foot and bicycle path. Okay, so here's the east bank of the Rio Grande looking north from the old Alameda footbridge. Yeah, the river looks muddy. This spring and summer, it was very high. It was a record height, higher than in quite a few years. But there's some mud banks over there in the distance with driftwood, and those were completely covered in water earlier this year. But as I pan to the left, the bank over here is not actually the end of the river. This is an island in the middle of the Rio Grande. And then this box right here with a horn on the bottom, suspended from the bridge, is the United States Army Corps of Engineers, and they measure the height of the river based on some kind of sonar radar coming out of that box. But that's a view of the river, as muddy as it is. And this is a zoomed in view looking north to the driftwood and deadwood along those banks. Kind of interesting. Be nice to get out there and take some photos. So I think it was in Paris a few years ago. There was some fence. I think it was over a bridge or something, but anyway, it was real popular with people, with couples, to put a lock on it and sort of signify their devotion and love for one another. And of course, this has kind of spread far and wide. And here in wee little old New Mexico, we get a lone little sample of that. And then maybe further down the fence, there's another little lock. But we have a couple of lovers with their locks along the fence here on the Rio Grande. L+D. Love is life. Isn't that the truth? So here we're standing adjacent to the island in the middle of the Rio Grande. In the middle of this island is a swampy little area, and you can see some ducks down there swimming around. MR ducks. So this right here, I believe, is a Russian olive tree. And there's a lot of Russian olives along the banks of the Rio Grande. I don't believe they're indigenous to this part of the country. They were brought in. And now here is the west fork of the Rio Grande, west of the central island. And what I notice, first of all, are these clumps, this one and this one. And those are some kind of debris that got caught earlier this year in the high water, and it sort of started building up. Might eventually turn into its own island if it goes long enough. Here's a view looking more directly north along the west fork of the Rio Grande, and as we pan to the northeast, we see the Sandias peeking out over the tree line on the east bank and the island in the middle. Don't shackle me with your love, or something like that. So now I'm standing on the west bank of the Rio Grande, and in the distance here, this is a boat landing, a little paved area with brickwork, and people can put their canoes or whatever, little rafts in the water. There is a road that they can haul them down to from the parking area, a little ramp. Anyways, it's a nice day. I like to hike through the river forest, what is known in Spanish as the bosque. And but we've had rain the last week, heavy rains in fact, and I'm sure it's going to be muddy. So we're on the west bank of the Rio Grande, and across the river, across the Alameda Bridge, east is another parking area, and that's where the scooters parked. People like to come down here and sit and fish. It's quite popular, even fishing the ditch banks, the banks of the acequias. There are fish once in a while down there. Now, this is a great little scene, and when I get my Intrepid 4x5 view camera, oh, did I tell you I ordered one of those? I'll be coming down here and doing some large format photography videos, most likely. But I'm going to turn around and walk back across the footbridge and head back to the old scooter. So this is one of the sluice gates that controls the water flow to the acequia. So this one is, water is coming in from the Rio Grande, and it would be controlled by this gate. And then on the other side of this little walking path, there's a, you might be able to see, there's actually some control handles up here for the gate. Anyway, it feeds the acequia on the other side that runs along the west bank of the Rio Grande. We are right here. And this is the bridge across Alameda going to the east, north is to the left. But south of here on the river, there is a shallow dam they built, and there is a city water pumping station, and they're actually pumping water out of the Rio Grande and injecting it back underground into the aquifer. Albuquerque back in the 1950s bought a lot of water rights from the San Juan River up in northern New Mexico and Colorado. So we're enjoying those water rights now, pumping it out of the river. Well, this is the classic old El Camino Motor Hotel, and this little motel on North 4th Street was originally, it's been here for a long time, been here since the 1930s, but the story of why it's there, it looks a lot like a Route 66 motel. And the reason why it does is because before 1937, 4th Street was Route 66. Route 66 went east to west through New Mexico, except it made a jog from Santa Rosa up to Santa Fe, then back down the Rio Grande Valley, through Albuquerque, south of Albuquerque, and then it cut west again near Los Lunas, where Highway 6 is. Anyways, after 1937, they realigned Route 66. Well, we are up at the Golden Pride barbecue chicken place in Northeast Albuquerque. This is owned by the Frontier Restaurant people. You might remember the Frontier Restaurant from a previous Motor Scooter Diaries episode, but I'm going to go in here and actually have their enchilada plate, which is really good. Well, there is lunch. Enchiladas with red and green chili, refried beans and cheese, a little bit of veggies, Arnold Palmer, homemade Frontier tortilla. Well, I just got home from my little scooter ride, and I'm putting on these top caps on top of my fence project. And look who likes the little top cap. Look what we got here. Isn't that cool? Hello, Mr. Mantis, or Mrs. Mantis.